Whew. Coming off a great weekend, JVT was spitting fire on sharp money just a little while ago. A lot going on. I spent all day working on my mock draft, which will probably have like 3 accurate selections in it. You know, the important things, JVT.
I want to put out a mock draft. Like, how do I get on that website? Like, how do I get tracked on that site?
Huddle
so
report?
I can, yeah.
Got to send it to him.
Oh, okay. So it's like a local Emmy.
Yeah.
So like, okay, gotcha. We used to have somebody that worked at the network that like really flaunted the fact that they had a local Emmy. We still? I'm not referencing that person. This person that I'm referencing is long gone. But yeah, and I was like, don't you just apply for those? And yeah, it was the case. So I'm gonna send my mock draft. I'm gonna put it in tonight, and then I'm gonna send it in. Let's do it.
Well, if I edit it though from when it gets posted at some point today to before Thursday, humans would get really mad at me because I did that last year and he got mad at me. I mean, apparently, you're not allowed to edit things.
It's funny is Huddle Report. Matt finished in the top 5 one year for Huddle Report. I don't know why. It just makes it funnier that Matt actively sent his mock draft to Huddle Report.
All right, we got a lot to get to today. We got 3 NBA playoff games. We got big picture stuff, certainly, regarding these series. And we got the start of some NHL series as well. Unfortunately, your beloved Nashville Predators couldn't get it done for you last night. I know you were pulling hard. You may or may not have not been watching in live time the Thunder game. Were you that dedicated to the Predators' future that you had?
Oh yeah, no. I that was on the main screen. Now I do have 2 screens available to me, but for some reason my wife thought it was a good time to watch Hunchback of Notre Dame, like the 1993 animated classic. So I had to stick to one television. And look, I had watched basketball all day, so I was going to catch up and watch Thunder Pelicans a little bit later, kept track on my phone. But no, I was locked in. Vancouver, Nashville. Didn't go well. Got off to a good start. They led 2-1 late, but ultimately lost 4-2.
Well, 4 NHL playoff games tonight, including Vegas at Dallas, L.A. at Edmonton, your late night affairs, Toronto, Boston, and the Islanders, Carolina gets things started. So very busy day. A lot of different takes and reports regarding the NFL draft. We'll try to put our finger on the pulse of as many NFL draft discussions as possible. It is draft week. We've seen the market. We talked on Friday, JVT, when you and I were filling in on Follow the Money, how much the market had moved against Jaden Daniels going number 2 to Washington. Well, guess what? The market's back. It is, as we sit here right now, at circa minus 250 that Jaden Daniels, minus 310 that Jaden Daniels will get drafted ahead of Drake May. A little bit of J.J. McCarthy love there. So I'll go back to what we talked about on Monday, and on Friday, and I promise we'll get to the NBA because there's 3 big games tonight. It does feel a little bit like we still don't know. Oh, yeah. We still don't know. I would guess it will be Jaden Daniels in my mock draft. I put Jaden Daniels too. But as I said on Friday, as I've continued to say, I would not bet into this market at number 2 because we don't know. Nothing has come out. And ultimately, though, it was interesting to note this. Daniel Jeremiah, who put out his mock draft last week from the NFL Network, had Drake May going 2. He today on, I believe it was the Pat McAfee show, said there's just too much smoke around the league, so he ultimately flipped it to Jaden Daniels going 2 and Drake May, I believe, going 3.
Yeah, no, we don't know anything. Nobody knows anything. And here's the thing, too. You know, there's a sect of people who will read into odds movement and just accept that as like, oh, okay, here we go. Like this is predictive. Yep. But what's funny about draft season in general is we've seen almost, you can pick any single market. We've seen a strong line move one direction or the other, like both ways at some point throughout this entire process. So I always find it funny as to like why we choose which line moves to believe are the predictive ones, right? So, for example, we'll go to like 4.5 quarterbacks. We've been tracking this whole time. Yep. Got as high as minus 320. Got as low as what pick here at Circa.
Around there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got right back up. Now we're floating around $2. There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, it's moving to the over. It's like, well, yeah, but it got to pick at 1.2. So,
and as so we were texting over the weekend about this. When this market first opened, Stations Casino, our friends here in town, were the first ones that I noticed put it up, and it was the under was the favorite at minus 140. Yeah. It got bet to the over heavily, and then it came back. You and I found what we felt like was the peak of the market at plus 260, and now because of a lot of Michael Penix reporting, I mean, can I I thought today the most laughable thing that I saw on the interwebs, and there's a lot of funny things on the internet, was Adam Schefter put out his what he's hearing on ESPN.com, which has some pretty good information. He said one general manager said he believes there is an undercurrent of support for Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix. Okay. Even though his team doesn't have a first-round grade on either, this particular general manager believes both Nix and Penix are day 2 picks. Some teams disagree, and there's now speculation Penix could go as high as number 8 to the Falcons. I remind you, the Atlanta Falcons just signed Kirk Cousins. Yes, he's coming off of a torn Achilles, to a 4-year, $180 million contract, but they're going to go ahead and spend this high of draft capital on a backup quarterback. Yeah, I mean, it seems logical.
No, and look, it's with that, too, I always say this. What Adam Schefter said could be true.
Yeah.
There could be an undercurrent of support for both of those guys. The Falcons could like Michael Penix, but there's more than one round. Like, we get wrapped up in these first rounds because it's generally the only round we can bet on. But there are other rounds. And so these teams can love both of these guys. These teams can be interested in both of these guys. However, it's, do you spend this first-round pick on that? And that's where we quibble with. So, look, at the end of the day, I'll say this. The only predictive line move for me that I buy into 100% is day of. We saw this 1,000 times over. Pick the draft that you want. Within 12 hours before the start of the NBA draft, Paolo Banchero went from the third choice for the number 1 overall pick to the favorite to be the number 1 overall pick. We saw last year with C.J. Stroud, right, moving the way that he did. But just in general, right, buying in on these line moves as predictive, even today, Monday, before the NFL draft, I just don't buy them. We just don't know at this point. And I'll remind anybody again, Justin Herbert. This day, right, the Monday, Tuesday before the draft, Justin Herbert had moved on the Dolphins board ahead of Tua Tagovailoa. And yet, for some reason, they drafted Tua Tagovailoa over Justin Herbert. There's just no rhyme or reason. There's no track record to tell you that these line moves are predictive, that the information we get at this point of the week is predictive, and that's what I'm just going to roll with as we move forward.
On this day, 1 year ago, the Monday of the NFL draft, last week, the Monday of the week of the NFL draft, Will Levis was minus 145 to go number 2. Not in the first round, number 2 overall. Ladies and gentlemen, he did not get drafted in the first round. Could Michael Penix be a first-round pick? Sure. Could a team select him at where they sit or trade back in? Yeah, it's certainly possible. But we still don't know. And there's heavily movement towards the over, minus 270 right now at DraftKings on over 4.5 quarterbacks. JVT, you are the king of this. You've been tracking draft betting for the last 7 years. How many times has the quarterback market gone over its number?
Once.
1 in 6.
Since 2017.
Could it happen this year? Sure. Certainly possible. All right. More NFL draft talk as the show goes on. But let's get to 3 games tonight, JVT, in the NBA. Cleveland up 1-0 on the Orlando Magic. They are laying 5.5. New York, the Knicks, celebrating again and giving expletives to Trae Young for some reason outside the Garden. Sure, why not, Knicks fans? You do your thing. They are a 5-point favorite over the Philadelphia 76ers. And the Denver Nuggets, who were down at the half to the Lakers, ultimately won and covered. By the way, as many of you have seen, home teams Saturday, Sunday, undefeated. 8-0 straight up, 7-1 ATS. The only team not to cover as a home team was the Oklahoma City Thunder late last night. So JVT will have lots of time to break these games down, but initial thoughts on the 3 games that are about to tip off, 2 games in the 7 o'clock Eastern hour, and 1 game late night Lakers.
I mean, the one to focus on here is Philly and New York, only because we do have some injury questions, we'll put it. Tyrese Maxey is going to reportedly be a game-time decision for Philly. He is ill. Now, I did bet Philly early this morning because I think that unless it's a debilitating illness, right? I think you're gonna play. Right? It's game 2 of the NBA postseason in the first round. You're down 1-0. You're on the road. Generally, guys are gonna gut this thing through. Market tends to believe that. We got as high as 6 this morning, Tim. Or at least that's the highest number I saw. We're right back down to 5. Indications that Embiid. He's also. It's funny when you list like some of these. You can look at it right and go, "Oh, Joel Embiid's questionable." and then you read the reason it's like injury management. Like, I don't think they're going to load manage here today in game 2 of the postseason. I think you're going to get Joel Embiid. So market is kind of heading in this direction. I actually thought that the number for this should have been about 3.5. So we'll see where we get. I don't think you're going to get that low, but for me, like, that's the floor of a playable number here. I think you're going to get Tyrese Maxey, but that's really the question or the thing to follow is Tyrese Maxey, game time decision, questionable status. And of course, the fact that, like, look, New York played a very good game. They grabbed over 50% of their missed shots or had an offensive rebounding rate of 50.9%. They shot 60% on above the break 3-point shots. They were awesome. Now, I think not a lot of that is sustainable. They had an offensive rating of just about 70 in half court, which is not very good. So there is some regression, I think, that is due to happen here for New York. But market really is gung-ho about this Knicks team, especially after that first one. And you've seen this adjustment. I think it's a little bit too much. But I think it's really obvious. Outside of Lakers, Nuggets, just because that's going to be the late-night game, Knicks and Sixers is going to be the primary focus this afternoon.
Nick Alberga will join us later on this hour. We'll get his thoughts on the 4 Stanley Cup playoff games tipping off. Dropping the puck at the top.
That's fine. We say kickoff for like everything. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Best bets later on this hour. I have another draft bet to put in the hopper. But NBA chatter continues on the other side of the break. Dave Dufour will help us break down the 3 games tonight and what we took away from the weekend that was. That's JVT. I'm Tim Murray. We're up and running, just like Zach Wilson off to Denver. It is VSiN Primetime.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
I told our bosses, keep these betting splits open. All right, you know who I am. I've got the most power at this network. You allow everybody to check out these betting splits, and you know what? They acquiesce. Betting splits is still free for all you folks. Check it out now. VSiN.com/splits. You can get all the betting splits data from DraftKings. Everything's going to be as lopsided as the splits for Mavericks and Clippers or Pacers and Bucks. Go find out yourself. Go to VSiN.com/splits.
Or Pelicans Kings on Friday night.
That's old hat.
That's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Tim Murray, a very happy Clippers fan.
No, there's no happiness here. We'll talk to Dave about it. Somebody tweeted me, Raheem Palmer of the Ringer tweeted me, I think it was on Saturday, just how do you do it as a Clippers fan? I responded with a lot of drugs, so got to do it.
And you're an Angels fan.
That's right.
Dave Dufour joins us right now to help us break down the evening slate of games and biggest takeaways from the weekend that was. You could follow him on social media at Dave, DUFOUR NBA. All right, before we get to the 3 games at hand tonight, Dave, kind of open-ended question, but from the 8 games that we saw this weekend, did anything change your mind on what you anticipated to see from that particular series?
Oh, I think we got to start with the Clippers.
Yes.
You know, no Kawhi Leonard, and the Mavericks are a team that, you know, a lot of people like me see them having a path to making the finals. I mean, they've got a number 1 in Luka Doncic, who can be the best player in any series against any team. And then Kyrie Irving as sort of second banana just works so perfectly. Ever since they got Daniel Gafford, I mean, this team has just had a different level to it. And I think we all just felt like this was going to be another Clippers letdown. I mean, JVT, you know, you're well versed in these, and wow, did they respond. And I would even say more than just the Clippers responding is that the Mavs just didn't show up. They look like maybe they were out a little late in LA, and the early start kind of got to them. I expected them to look much better in game 2, but you know, that was one that I felt like the Mavs should have stolen, not just needed to, but should have. And I think, you know, you have to treat that one almost like a home loss if you're Dallas, because no Kawhi Leonard is a huge deal for the Clippers. So now you buy the Clippers some time. I mean, I don't know if he's going to play in game 2, but, you know, you can see a scenario where the Clippers are like, hey, we might be able to sit Kawhi for another game, go to Dallas with a split, and then maybe he winds up being ready for game 3 with an extra game off, and it's a 1-1 series. So the Clippers are kind of sitting pretty right now, which, you know, I'm dating a Clippers fan. I have been told they never feel good when they're sitting pretty. They like to play from behind. So Not a great thing, I guess, if you're a Clippers fan.
No, I made the joke over the weekend, Dave, that Kawhi Leonard's going to be questionable the entire series, and then we're going to find out afterwards he actually had his knee removed, and that he's never going to play again. So I think this, and you tell me if I'm wrong here. I've been using the term Mandela effect when it comes to the Clippers, because you even used it, right? We're used to these Clippers letdown. Excuse me. Last year, they get into the postseason. They win game one with Kawhi Leonard in Phoenix. I personally think they looked like if Kawhi was going to be healthy, they were going to beat the Phoenix Suns. That's neither here nor there. He gets injured. We know what happens in that series. The season before they make the playoffs, so they missed the playoffs before, but the season prior when they made it to the postseason, they made it to the Western Conference Finals. That was without Kawhi. And so I feel like that, on top of the fact that there's this thought that the Mavericks own the Los Angeles Clippers, even though that's not the case, and they're 2-0 in series against Luka Doncic and have a winning record against him, I feel like there's this weird Mandela effect that dates back to the bubble, where they really let everybody down, where they looked awful, and everybody else kind of ignores the little bits of success that they have had outside of the injuries that this team has suffered. Is that kind of fair to point out here?
Yeah, I think that's actually exactly what happens. I mean, the zeitgeist is never reality, right? It's how we feel about a moment. And, let's not forget, like some of Luka's big signature moments early in his career were those playoff games against the Clippers. Mm-hmm. I mean, didn't he hit a game winner in one of those?
He did.
So, I mean, he's got some huge moments against them. And the Clippers' disappointment kind of being baked into their fandom, I think has played into this as well. Like, when you have Paul George and Kawhi who have missed so much time, and the worst part is missing important games. It's not just, a scenario where, all right, he's load managed till the playoffs and then he gets to go on this great run. And I'm with you. I thought last year might have been the year for them. I mean, that Phoenix matchup was perfect. I thought Kawhi was the best player in that series. There are times this year where Kawhi has been the best player in the NBA, I think. And when you've got that sort of guy, as long as he can go, he gives you a chance in any series. So I'm with you. I hope he's coming back. I mean, when you compare it to the Pacers and the Bucks, where the Pacers had a chance to steal a game with no Giannis, and I think that I would feel better about the Mavericks in game 2 than the Pacers, if that makes sense.
Sure.
The Mavericks just laid an egg. Right. That was just an awful game. The Pacers got destroyed. I mean, and it was just a huge difference. And it kind of continues a trend for them. So with the Clippers and Mavs, I think we're going to have a great series. Pacers, Bucks, I think that one was over. They had their shot in game 1 and blew it.
So that kind of ties into what I wanted to follow up with, which is the thought of playoff experience, right? With the Mavericks, as I put it jokingly, Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington were riding away in Charlotte and Washington, right? They haven't seen basketball like this. And that kind of transpired a little bit, especially with Gafford in that first game. For the Pacers, Dave, that's a new crew, right? Pascal Siakam looked like the best Pacer on the floor. You want to know why? Because he won an NBA Finals championship. But outside of that, you got a bunch of young guys who I don't think were ready for that intensity. How long does it take for these guys to get ready? Because it's part of the reason why I liked Milwaukee yesterday was I don't think people realize, this is a team that's won a championship. Damian Lillard's been to Western Conference Finals. They're ready for this change in type of physicality in basketball, and I thought that really stuck out yesterday.
Also, I mean, let's talk about the difference. Just like you've got a veteran team in Milwaukee versus, like you said, a young team in Indiana. This is why Indiana was playing, I think they played 11 guys or something in the first half of that game, because Carlisle's got a lot of young guys. And when the playoff lights come on, man, they are bright, and you don't know how everyone's going to respond. Tyrese Halliburton, this is a guy who, for some reason early on, people were talking about him as an MVP candidate, and we know he got hurt and has had his fall off ever since. But he only took 7 shots. You're shying away from the spotlight. You're supposed to be the number one guy. Siakam's not the number one guy. It's supposed to be Halliburton. You've got to take more than 7 shots to get it done. I mean, 9 points in game 1 of the playoffs, that's just not enough, especially against a team like the Bucks. So I think Carlisle, we would argue has a tactical advantage as a coach, although I think Doc is underrated as an X's and O's guy. I mean, I know we kind of make our jokes about Doc, but he can really coach a basketball team. But the thing that Doc has the advantage in is that he really knows how to handle veterans and how to get them to step up. I mean, Damian Lillard scores 35 points in the first half of this game and essentially gives them 2 quarters off, right? They got 2-quarter head start on rest for game 2, and that's huge. So I think, again, man, it's just the Pacers had an opportunity there to steal one. And that could have given them the series, just the way it goes, with that high-powered offense. If they can find a way to score, and if the Bucks struggle to score, which they have occasionally this year, although not that much since Doc's been there, and then with the lack of defense that you think that you would get from the Bucks without Giannis. So, I don't know. I think that series is over. Damian Lillard just showed up in a way that we haven't seen out of him. as a Milwaukee Buck. So that was nice.
I do local radio, Dave, in Milwaukee, and be honest, I was wavering a little bit on my stance, but ultimately I said, this is the reason they traded for Damian Lillard. He said it yesterday, right? It's not the regular season. They lost to Boston because no one else could step up outside of Giannis, and we saw it there at least for 24 minutes. I want to jump to the late night game. Dave Dufour joining us here on our progressive guest line at Dave Dufour NBA as we get ready for 3 games tonight. The one a lot of people are going to gravitate towards, I guess Philly, New York too, but I want to jump to the late night game, Lakers and Nuggets. And we saw a really good first half. LeBron was great, and then it felt like, did he run out of gas? Did the Nuggets figure it out? They ended up winning. They covered as well, the Nuggets did. Did we see the best of the Lakers there in that first half, Dave, or do you believe with the poor performance of D'Angelo Russell, we get another fight from Los Angeles tonight?
I mean, I can never rule out LeBron James. The guy is a master. I think that what you're looking at right now is that Jokic has just completely taken over what we thought LeBron was. So, like, Jokic is now the guy that you just cannot bet against, period. He is Tim Duncan for the NBA. And I think that that's just a mountain that LeBron can no longer climb on his own. Anthony Davis had a pretty good game, but, it's about impact, not stats. I don't really care. I think you got to make a bigger impact if you're Anthony Davis. I need 40-point impact in the playoffs just because of this roster. You mentioned D'Angelo Russell. Yeah, he had a bad game. And part of the reason that they've been so good since the All-Star break is because of him. So I think if he has a better game, they're a little more in it. But if you look how the Nuggets came out at halftime, and I'm not going to say they flipped a switch because this is a really great basketball team, but they just lock in and it's over. And I just think that they can do that at any point against this team. They have the Lakers number. And honestly, the number is 15. It's Jokic. He is the best player in the world, in the universe. And I think when you've got that sort of superpower, you're hard to beat. You need more than what the Lakers have. They just don't have the talent. And this was a team that had a great run last year. I think they had some very good luck on their side, but they found an identity come playoff time. This year, they've kind of struggled, I think, with identity. And that's something they're going to have to look at this summer. But their summer's about to start. I mean, it's coming up. If it's not a sweep, it's 5 games. I mean, they just don't have it.
Hey,
and the Nuggets are the champs.
Darvin Ham said he's got more for Nikola Jokic. Okay, now he said the exact same thing after Game 1 last year, but still, like, he's got more left in the pockets.
I don't think tasers are allowed in the NBA. I mean, that's the only thing I could come up with that's going to stop Nikola Jokic.
Dave, great stuff, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
At Dave Dufour NBA on Twitter. We got our best bets coming up on the other side. Join us on YouTube for free right now, youtube.com/VSiN Live.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
VSiN.com, folks, check it out now. We got a lot of great content up there. We have our top plays based on betting splits, power ratings, and trends from Steve Makinen in the NBA postseason today. My article, writing up best bet in the 76ers and Knicks, plus plenty of baseball and, yes, tennis coverage. How about that? As well as, of course, analysis for the National Hockey League postseason. Sorry, Stanley Cup playoffs. Check it out now, VSiN.com.
Speaking of those Stanley Cup playoffs, 4 games tonight. The Golden Muzzy, Nick Alberga. He's going to join us in 15 minutes. His beloved Toronto Maple Leafs, fresh off of a butt whipping in Game 1 against the Boston Bruins. They are back on the ice tonight. So 4 games tonight: Toronto, Boston, Islanders, Carolina, Vegas, Dallas, and L.A., Edmonton. Those 2 latter series are just starting this evening. So late night affairs there: Vegas, Dallas, L.A., Edmonton. All right, best bet time. And let's start with our little beautiful intro, and then I've got some evidence I want to bring to the table. So, time for some best bets.
I see you using an old style.
I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom.
Putting our money where our mouth is.
I like to live dangerously.
It's time for best bets.
Come on, Jerry, it's a lock.
All right, love that open. Off to a good start on the Denver series spread. I was a little worried in the first half, but Denver minus 1.5. We're feeling all right there. Best bet from Friday's show, Adonai Mitchell over 27.5 draft position. But I want to insert another draft play into the portfolio. And we will, by the way, you can always check out our picks, vsin.com/picks. I know these moves, especially draft picks, draft bets move quite a bit. But I want to do a little bit of a longer shot. Right now, the best price is 3-1 on this particular bet. It was plus 375 earlier today. I grabbed it at BetMGM. So, all right, 75 cents. But I think it's still playable at 3-1, which is what DraftKings is offering. And it's Byron Murphy to go in the first round. I talked about this a little bit with
Byron Murphy the second?
Sorry. Byron Murphy in the top 10.
Okay, I was
my bad.
You got 3-1 on that?
No. My bad.
Okay.
To go top 10.
Okay.
My mistake. Yeah, it's over-unders 14.5. It is not 3-1 to go.
What a bet.
In the first round. All right, so I talked a little bit about this with Michael Lombardi and Femi on Sunday, saying that I think there's a chance he could go as the first defensive player because there was a lot of groupthink about Dallas Turner going number 8 to the Atlanta Falcons. So Todd McShay was on with Pardon My Take earlier today, and I thought this was a pretty interesting and strong case for Byron Murphy to go in the top 10. Take a listen.
But what I'll say with the mock drafts is everyone has got Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama, going 8 to Atlanta. Like if you line up all the mock drafts, 8 to Atlanta, and maybe he is the first defensive player, and maybe that's where Atlanta goes. They certainly could use an edge. But the more people I've talked to in the league, the more I get the sense that Byron Murphy, defensive tackle from Texas, could be, and I don't want to say he's most likely, but if there's going to be a surprise in the top 10, it's Byron Murphy.
All right. So that was what he went in. He went a little bit deeper. By the way, fix your microphone there, Todd. I feel like he had the microphone out and he was talking into the laptop.
He's old. Am I muted?
Couple other things to point out regarding Byron Murphy. Peter Schrager today did like the 5 things he's hearing, and one of the 5 things he was hearing was that Byron Murphy was going to go in the top 20, which isn't really a hot take considering his over-under is, 14.5, 15.5? Daniel Jeremiah 6 days ago put out a tweet that said, 2 stocks I'd like to buy a little over a week away from the draft. Graham Barton, who is the interior offensive lineman from Duke, who that was a best bet of mine last week, under 21.5, and Byron Murphy. And then last one, courtesy of Adam Schefter, who I kind of made fun of earlier in the show. It feels as if most mocks are predicting edge rusher Dallas Turner will be the first defensive player drafted Thursday night, and maybe he will. But there are some front office executives who believe defensive tackle Byron Murphy II has a realistic chance of seizing that honor. It's possible a defender might not be picked until Atlanta at number 8 or Chicago at number 9. Murphy could be a consideration for both teams.
So Adam Schefter and Tom McShay are talking to the same people.
Basically, they are. He might interest new Falcons coach Raheem Morris, who had Aaron Donald dominate at that position where he coordinated in Los Angeles. So I do think the value, at plus 450, probably not as there as I would like. So I think at 3-1, where you have potential outs at 8 with Atlanta, 9 with Chicago. I was texting with Brad Biggs, Chicago Tribune, earlier today, and he felt like it's either going to be, in his eyes, a pass catcher or potentially Byron Murphy. So at 3-1, let's take a flyer. Throw out a little 3-1 flyer. Byron Murphy, top 10, added to the portfolio, JVT.
I dislike it.
Yeah?
If we're being quite honest.
Okay.
Well, as somebody who has Dallas Turner to go number 8 overall, this flies in the face of what I have wagered. So I hate it. I hope you lose it.
Well, Dallas Turner goes 8. Byron Murphy goes 9.
What are the odds on Byron Murphy just to go number 9?
Probably higher than that.
There you go. See? There you go. I poked all sorts of holes in this thing.
I'm just trying to be optimistic. I hope your bet loses.
There we go. Be honest. That's why, like, when people tell us when they sign off, good luck, you don't mean that, especially if we're on the opposite side. Hope you lose. Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. 6-1 to go just specifically at number 9.
I'd rather have him 3-1.
Twice the payout. All right. For me, let's go with we'll go with the NBA tonight. One bet. This was bet made earlier up on the article at VSiN.com if you want to go check those out. I actually think the range of playable numbers here is vast. So for the show's purposes, we'll go Philadelphia 76ers +5 against the New York Knicks. Tyrese Maxey's questionable. Joel Embiid's questionable. Nick Nurse has said that they are both game-time decisions. One is dealing with an illness. One is dealing with, as it has been labeled, injury management. I expect that both are going to play here today. And I think that when you look at the way the Knicks won that game against the Philadelphia 76ers, I think they did a lot right, especially some stuff that can be repeated once again. For example, I think they can dominate a 76ers team that finished in the bottom fifth of the league in defensive rebounding rate. Certainly plausible. They do have a Joel Embiid, but kind of small and not a really good defensive rebounding team. However, Tim, in terms of half-court possessions, offense was not very good for the New York Knicks. I think that kind of maintains itself. It's a pretty good half-court defense with Joel Embiid out there in the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't think you're shooting 61% on non-corner threes or above the break threes. It's probably going to regress a bit, especially when you look at the way that they shot those threes. I think that this is one where we're just talking about pure number value, where, again, we'll talk more about home court a little bit later in the show. I'm rolling with home court at about 4 points here in this postseason. And to say that this Knicks team is solidly better than the Philadelphia 76ers, a team that odds makers thought should be favored in this series when the series first got posted, I think we've come a little bit too far in one direction, especially after a performance which I thought there were some unsustainable performances individually when we saw that win over Philadelphia. So number grab again. I think this is actually playable down to 3.5, so it's not going to get that low. Circuit actually just flashed to 4.5 minus 115 to the favored side, but I think Philly is the play here tonight.
All right, Philly +5 and Byron Murphy top 10, 3-1 right now at DraftKings. Look around, see if you can find maybe a better price and maybe see what he is to be the first defensive player selected. JVT does not agree with said play. We will get to...
It's not that I agree or disagree. It's just that I hope it loses.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Hope you lose everything. No, that's not true.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're on the same on a lot of things.
We are on the same on a lot of things.
I wouldn't wish that upon
Diamond strong hands right on quarterbacks. I wanted to ask you this, JVT. By the way, if you're wondering, Stanley Cup playoffs, 4 games tonight. Nick Alberger coming up on the other side of the break to give us his thoughts on that. As we look at these adjusted series prices, and sometimes it's a good time to jump in after a particular result goes one way. You look at Phoenix, Minnesota. Phoenix went off, I think, around a $1.30 favorite. They lose game 1. They're now plus 125. The Pacers, I know where you stand on this, but I'll point it out. They're now plus 190. They were even money to win this series, so that has moved significantly there. And then Dallas out to plus 125. They were a favorite as well. Any teams that lost game 1 that you think is worth a potential look in the series price, and the one that certainly we were just talking about. I'm seeing I don't know why it's not listed here. When it comes to the Knicks and the 76ers, but any series prices that intrigue you at where they sit right now?
We'll start with Miami Heat at 35-1. No. It's the team you mentioned, right? It's the Philadelphia 76ers. As somebody believes the market's gone a little too far in one direction. Somebody believes that they are the side tonight. Obviously, betting them this side, think they can win the game here today. I think the probability of them winning this game is higher than the market says right now. I think that is ultimately, of the team specifically in those parameters that lost that first game, Philly is, I think, the most obvious play if you're going to go in that direction. And
plus
actually,
230 at Circa, by the way. I don't know why it's not listed here.
Plus 230, plus 220 in that range. I also think, too, you can make the argument that the teams actually won game 1, specifically Milwaukee, Los Angeles, the Clippers, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. You can make the argument that there's value in actually coming back and laying those numbers after a game 1 victory, which we can get into a little bit later.
4 games tonight on the ice, including 2 series getting started with the Vegas Golden Knights at Dallas and Edmonton hosting the Los Angeles Kings. Nick Alberga will help us break down the 4 games on the ice. On the other side, we're up and running. It is VSiN PrimeTime.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. Same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and more. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use code VSiN. New customers at $5 get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code VSIN. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Alongside Jonathan Von Tobel, I am Tim Murray. It is VSiN Primetime. We're live here in Las Vegas, Nevada, where the Golden Knights, the Defending Stanley Cup champions are not at home tonight. They are on the road at the Dallas Stars, but they start their series, and help break it down is our good friend Nick Alberga. You can follow him on Twitter at The Golden Muzzy. Joins us on our progressive guest line. Nick, 4 games tonight, which we will get to. A weekend of action as well. Let's start with a team that you know oh so well. That would be the Toronto Maple Leafs, who find themselves in an 0-1 hole against the Boston Bruins tonight. They are a plus 130 underdog here in this spot, minus 145 or so for the Boston Bruins. What was your takeaway from game 1, and what do you expect tonight in Boston?
My takeaway is that the Leafs need to be better. Having said that, they've dropped 8 straight games against the Boston Bruins. They haven't scored more than 2 goals in a playoff game 9 times now. It's pretty wild. It's pretty surreal. A couple of important notes to grab as the 2 teams on the ice right now for the pregame. Linus Ullmark's going to start this game, which I think is a wild decision considering he had an impeccable Jeremy Swayman had an impeccable regular season against the Leafs, and I thought he was great in game 1, making 35 saves. So keep that in mind as you bet on this game. And William Nylander, who missed the first game, not on the ice for game 2 here for the Maple Leafs. So I think they're gonna be up against it. I will take a stab on the Maple Leafs money line in this game. I expect a response. I know Boston's going to be good again, but give me the Leafs in this game.
So I'm always curious, Nick, as somebody who kind of drops in around this time, right, and doesn't watch a ton of regular season hockey, I like to kind of handicap it from a statistical standpoint because you can kind of rely on numbers to a certain extent. I like to focus on the shot share, expected goals for, high danger chances. How predictive are those metrics from a game-to-game basis over the course of the series? Because Toronto did win quite a few of those in game 1. Am I correct?
You are. My combo to that would be that playoff hockey is just a different brand, a different style. Like, I think if you just want to look strictly at the numbers, the Maple Leafs are a pretty decent puck possession team, but they don't play that brand that's conducive to like being successful in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I think you have to go to the dirty areas. I think it's important to keep in mind, but I don't think momentum carries from game to game, certainly not from the end of the regular season to the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I think you're right. Like, my takeaway from game 1, it probably wasn't a 5-1 hockey game, but ultimately this time of year, it comes down to execution. And I think you look specifically at Boston, did a great job with that in game 1. The Leafs not so much, hit a couple posts, so did the Boston Bruins for that matter. So ultimately, I think it comes down to execution, but I do think game 1 was closer than people are giving the Leafs some respect for right now.
Nick Alberga at the Golden Muzzy is where you can find him on social media. All right, Nick, I mentioned it. Let's jump ahead to 2 series that haven't started yet. We'll start with Vegas at the Dallas Stars. Kind of a bizarre end of the regular season. Vegas, if they won, they would have got the 3 seed. Seemed like they didn't really want to win that game to close out the year against the Ducks, and here they are against the Dallas Stars. So what do you make of this series from a big picture perspective and also micro? What is your expectation tonight? Because it looks like some betting money did come in on the Stars.
Yeah, this one's another really tough one because we have no clue what Vegas is going to look like. They had a quote on their social media today. I think Mark Stone, the captain, is going to come back out of nowhere, 3rd consecutive season, ready in time for game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Make of that what you will, but you can never discredit the defending Cup champs. I do think it's a really difficult matchup for them. I know we look at the regular season metrics and stats, but all the games happened in the first half, and then Dallas really got cooking in the second half. If you're polling me, which you are, I think the difference in this series will be goaltending. Ironically enough, that was the big story as to why Vegas won the Cup. Of course, defensively as well, they were really, really strong. But it's going to be Logan Thompson, I believe, starting game 1 here against Dallas. And they have Jake Ottinger, who I think when he's on his game is probably a top 5 goalie in the NHL. It was an up and down season for him. That's probably why I give Dallas the edge in this series, and specifically here in game 1 with the home ice advantage, because the Stars are a team that have been pushing for a couple years, and I think now is the time maybe they push through here in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
All right, so what about New York, Carolina? Pretty fascinating. We're talking about well over $2 favorite for the Hurricanes, but it was a really tight game in game 1. The metrics point that out. Final score would point that out. What do you do here?
Yeah, it was tight. I still like Carolina in this game. Obviously, it makes no sense to bet Carolina. That price is way too juiced, but I just think they're definitively the better team. I think if the Islanders are going to crawl back in this series, they make it a home series where they win their games on home ice. That barn is electric, as we all know. But I think you look at the Canes, they're a perennial Stanley Cup contender for a reason. I'd probably play the under 5.5 in this game. The other thing I was scouting before this series started that didn't hit in game 1 was the under 1.5 in period 1. I might play that. I know I missed out on Monday. 2 goals or the other day, I should say, 2 goals were scored there. But I think in general, Defense is what I expected in this series, and I think this will continue. Let's not forget, it's a third meeting in the last couple of years for these two squads. They know really, really well, each other really, really well, and I think from a defensive standpoint, both teams are going to be locked in. So I expect another defensive-minded game. I think if you want to look at players, don't sleep on the name Jake Gensel, who went from Pittsburgh to the Carolina Hurricanes at the trade deadline. He is a playoff performer, relatively quiet in game one. I wonder if he scores tonight.
Real quick, do prices adjust quite a bit in-game? Like, is hockey a sport where you can jump in-game? And what are the things you're looking for potentially to maybe jump on a team in-game? Like, you want to wait for a cheaper price on Carolina or a bigger number on New York?
It's good you bring up that question because that's a really good strategy when you bet. In fact, like when you're betting on series, I almost like to wait until I see at least game one before, acquiring a side I like to look at. It's unique that you make that, you asked that question because even yesterday with that crazy Winnipeg, Colorado game, I took a flyer on the Avs down 4-3 plus 280. Granted, it didn't hit, but I think a lot of it is feel. Like, for example, you watch that game, it was crazy and chaotic. And then you look at like a Nathan McKinnon, you look at Rantanen and how good they were playing Makar as well. But it ultimately came down to not being able to get a save from Alexander Georgiev. So I think this game specifically, if the Islanders do go ahead and score the first goal, I think maybe that's the value you jump on when, you look at the Carolina Hurricanes. But it does change, and it really is crazy depending on the matchup, what kind of value you can get in game. So maybe that's a strategy you look at moving forward too.
Case in point yesterday, Tim, Nashville, Vancouver, right? Nashville goes into the third period up 2-1. They end up losing 4-2.
Nick Alberga joining us here on our Progressive Guest Line. Games coming up top of the hour. We hit on Toronto, Boston. L.A., Edmonton, that's the late night affair. Edmonton gets off to the incredibly slow start. They bounce back. They're the 2 seed in their respective bracket there. Vegas with that loss on the opposite side of the bracket. This is a pretty juicy series price. So I was just looking at it heading into tonight where the Kings are sitting at, I believe it's -2... the Oilers are -190. I beg your pardon. So what do you make of this series, Nick, and anything tonight, late night north of the border?
So make of this information what you would like if you're watching or listening right now. The Oilers haven't won game one of a series on home ice since 1990. Wow. They played the LA Kings last year. They lost game one. So again, I'm not telling you which way to bet on that front because I think the Oilers are a very, very special team. And I could see a direct path where they win the Stanley Cup. Like I think the draw is in favor of Edmonton to at least go to a conference final. But do not sleep on pesky teams this time of year. I think ultimately LA, it's going to come down to goaltending. Cam Talbot, the former Edmonton Oiler, starting game one. They're a pesky bunch. Edmonton's had their number the last couple of years, so keep that in mind. But it's hard to bet against Edmonton because of what Draisaitl and McDavid put together in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Love the depth of that team. But if there's probably a direction you want to go here with game one is laying some money on Los Angeles. The stats I tell you about, and just like the fact that, so far through 6 games, all home ice teams have won. I mean, there's got to be a couple games that go the other way. So I actually think there's value on LA. And I like a shot prop in this game. Adrian Kempe over 2.5 shots on goal for the Los Angeles Kings, dating back 10 outings now against the Oilers. He has cleared that number. So I look for that again tonight.
Are the Oilers the sexy team that everybody keeps pointing to? Are they the Dallas Mavericks of the hockey world this postseason?
Yeah, a lot of people hot on them. A lot of people hot on the Carolina Hurricanes, understandably so, the Dallas Stars as well. But Edmonton specifically, because of the path I just mentioned, like if they win this series, they would meet up with Vancouver or Nashville, taking nothing away from those two teams. But I think Edmonton's better than them. And I think they would find a real opponent. I should be more nicer about that, but like a hard opponent, I think, in the conference final. There's some really good teams in the Western Conference. Ultimately, every series is going to be difficult, but I think when you look at the Oilers specifically, they are battle-tested, and they seem like they're ready for something significant. But again, as we saw last spring, anything is possible. Vegas defied the odds, defied the logic, and with like their 4th-string goalie, they beat Edmonton. So you just never know, right, guys?
You could catch him on Leafs Morning Take, also the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast. Follow him on Twitter at The Golden Muzzy. Nick, always appreciate it, man. Enjoy the games tonight.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
There he is, our good friend Nick Alberga, joining us on our Progressive Guest Line. Before we head to the top of the hour break, JVT, you alluded to it. Not surprising, Tyrese Maxey will play tonight for the Philadelphia 76ers against the New York Knicks. 1 hour in the books, much more to come, including home court advantage in the NBA playoffs.